President-elect Donald Trump tapping Miami-Dade County Commissioner Kevin Marino Cabrera to serve as U.S. ambassador to Panama. The choice coming as Trump floats the idea of the U.S. reclaiming control of the Panama Canal. And while the president of Panama is calling Trump's claim about Chinese soldiers at the canal nonsense, there are growing concerns over China's influence in the region. Let's get the read on all of this from Gordon Chang. He's Gatestone Institute senior fellow and author of the book, China is Going to War. Gordon, great to see you. Thanks for being here. I covered Latin America for 12 years, part of my journalistic history. I was unaware of the extent to which China is involved in the Panama Canal. It is incredible right now. They control two of Panama's principal zone ports, the Atlantic and the Pacific side. They're finishing another one, by the way, a cruise terminal on, I believe it's on the Pacific coast side. They have 3 bridges across the canal. Another one is planned. A lot of Chinese companies like Huawei and the usual suspects are involved in the Panama Free Trade Zone. They are in deep in Panama right now.
Well, they certainly are. And they're also deep in the canal zone. As you pointed out, they've got port operations at both ends of the canal. General Laura Richardson, when she was the head of U.S. Southern Command, said that those port facilities and those state enterprises were dual use. In other words, they could be used in a wartime situation. And China has many ways in which it can close down the Panama Canal. It can, first of all, those bridges. We learned what can happen when a bridge goes down in March at the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore when a container ship hit one of the piers. Absolutely. The Chinese will have 4 bridges, and they can do that. And they can also sink ships in the middle of the canal. So there's a number of ways they can take that choke point out of the use of the U.S.
Yeah, so even if you don't have Chinese soldiers marching around, as President Trump said, you clearly have the influence, the military influence, so the potential use of that Panama Canal against our military influence if we're in any conflict where we have to use a canal.
Yes, and I do believe that China does have soldiers in the canal zone. So it is that risk as well. So it's just comprehensive. And it's right for the president to talk about these issues because the U.S. Navy is crucially dependent on the canal. And the Chinese also want a military base at the tip of South America in Argentina at the Straits of Magellan. Wow. Fortunately, they're not going to get it because of the election of Javier Milei recently. But nonetheless, China's going to continue to try to control the tip of South America as well as the canal.
By the way, of course, obviously, Panama, the government there refutes a lot of what the president has been saying. He claims that the influence is overblown, et cetera. But we're pretty clear about their specific influence that you've been talking about. It wasn't too long ago that Democrats were very concerned about this. It may seem like ancient history, but when JFK was running for president, in the Democratic platform, they said, talking about reaffirming, quote, our historic policy of opposition to the establishment anywhere in the Americas of governments dominated by foreign powers. And they made this statement, the Democrats did, specifically because of what you just said. If we go to war anywhere, we need that canal.
Yes. And since that time, the Obama administration formally renounced the Monroe Doctrine, going back to the 1820s, where the United States said that we would not tolerate foreign powers in our hemisphere. Now, fortunately, in the first Trump administration, Secretary of State Tillerson put back the Monroe Doctrine, and I hope President Trump does that again, because although countries may say they don't like American interference, we should not allow the Chinese to interfere. And we know the Chinese are much more influential and have interfered throughout South America.
Well, last question. President Xi knows Donald Trump. Donald Trump knows President Xi. How do you think these guys are going to deal with each other on this subject?
Well, I hope that President Trump continues forward because he knows, as he has repeatedly said, China is an adversary. And he's also said privately that Xi Jinping is vicious. So clearly, I think President Trump knows that this competition is not a normal one with China and that we've got to take extraordinary measures.
All right, Gordon Chang, we thank you for that, Gordon. A lot more to talk about on this subject next time. See you later. Have a wonderful New Year.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Kane podcast for full episodes right now.